One of my interests in the world is Mahdi Shaheeb Sher from United Kingdom, born in 1980, is China in the world. I think that China is very big at the moment in the world. It has 1 billion population, and that's kind of 4 times bigger than America. And America seems to be some kind of a whale country in the world. It's a very large country in the world. It's probably twice the size of Russia as a country. So America is quite big in the world as a country. But interestingly enough, I think China is also very big in the world with 1 billion Chinese people. And what are Chinese people? I think Chinese people have some kind of Confucius thought and mentality. It's kind of considerate towards other people and passive, but I think it's confused thought. I think that's what Confucius is. He's confused. Confucius is confused. That's what Chinese thought is. It's confused. So I think that's what China is primarily. It's confused in the world. And I think the fact that it has 1 billion population and it's perhaps quite large as well is very big for Asia. That's what China is. It's very big for Asia. It's bigger than Japan in Asia, and Japan is very big for Asia. Why is Japan very big for Asia? Because it does tiger economies all over Asia. That's why Japan is very big for Asia. I think that Asia before the 1980s and Japanese economics was quite small, but from the 1980s and Japanese economics and Japanese businessmen, I like Japanese businessmen, I like them a lot. But I think with Japanese businessmen, we have tiger economies all over Asia, and they've done it very cleverly and very slowly over time and with gradual development. Asia has developed maybe 16 times with Japanese businessmen. That's how Japan was during the 1980s. And as Mahdi Shaheeb Sher, that's one of my accomplishments in the world. I think I've encouraged Japanese businessmen in the world, and I do like that as an accomplishment. As Mahdi Shaheeb Sher, the world can develop 10 times with those things. But I think unfortunately with the Fukushima nuclear disaster, we have China now replacing Japan as a power, and it dominates most of Asia now. So I think we have perhaps lost most of Japan, and we have China now kind of replacing Japan in Asia. So Asia in the world is changing. It's changing from a Japanese control of influence to a Chinese control of influence. And that's because China has 1 billion Chinese people. I think that it's kind of undeveloped by its history and culture. It's never advanced very much with science or technology, but it has a lot of manpower. And I think that's the problem. It's not very advanced, but it has a lot of manpower and labor. And it's through sheer force of population rather than economics and as an advanced power or a political power that China is governing the world. It's kind of like a Chinese horde in the world. I think we have some kind of Chinese horde. And why? Because I think it comes down to some kind of ethnicity issue. I think Chinese are very sensitive as people, and that's respectful and good. People have their own cultures, behaviours and characteristics, and cultures and habits as well. And it's acceptable for Chinese to be sensitive. That's their right and freedom. All people have freedoms, because animals have freedoms in the world. That's why people should have freedoms. They shouldn't be imprisoned in houses and dwellings and cages and cities and transportation and crime and motorways and bad food and inadequate clothing, cotton clothing. We should have fur clothing, not cotton clothing. That's my opinion as Mahdi Shaheeb Sher. We should have good quality fur clothing because it's protective against elements and man in the world. It allows man to survive in the world. That's what fur clothing does. But we seem to have cheap cotton clothing, perhaps Primark clothing, and that is very inadequate for the dignity of man in the world. And I think unusually with this Chinese horde in the world, we have some kind of condition of cheap food and cheap labour. And this is very concerning because Europe, I think, is suffering for this. It's at a detriment to China. And Europe has done a lot in terms of advanced economics. So it should deserve some kind of compliment for that contribution for advanced economics. But I think that we now have an overwhelming population from China, South America or Latin America and Africa. We have an overwhelming population from these areas, and that is absolutely flooding the world with population and people, and that unfortunately is more significant than the economic contribution that perhaps Europe or the Western world can provide. So I think that we are facing a challenge with China in the world. We are facing a challenge from China in the world, and it's to do with the number of people that are flooding the world. So I think that there are challenges in the future, lots of challenges, because whereas before we had stable relations with normal culture and behavior, now we have some kind of Asian introduction which is unacceptable. And I think that with this Chinese manpower and population, it's kind of overwhelmed the world with very serious challenges. And I think that unfortunately, I think these challenges are there for a long time in the future, maybe 100 years or 200 years or 300 years. So I think these challenges are permanent now. I don't think they can be erased. I think they're permanent. And I think in particular, China has a strong relation and backing from Russia. I think it has some kind of guidance from Russia, and that's why Russia is very evil in the world, because it's kind of supporting China in a very stupid way perhaps. But I think that when you look at the Chinese culture we have in the world now, and it's perhaps 30 to 70% strong, Chinese people eat spiders. That's what they have in their diet. Animals don't eat spiders. Rodents don't eat spiders, but Chinese eat spiders. And that takes away the dignity of man, because man should never eat spiders. They should eat healthy food that is nutritious and warm and appetizing. But I think that with Chinese people, they're very peculiar in the world because they eat spiders, and no other people in the world eat spiders. Africans don't eat spiders, Australians don't eat spiders, India doesn't eat spiders, Europeans don't eat spiders, 90% of the world doesn't eat spiders, but for some reason Chinese people have an odd behavior where they have to eat spiders, and perhaps a lot of them. frozen spiders in frozen freezers, in frozen Chinese supermarkets, So I think that's the behavior and characteristic we have to deal with some of the challenges from China in the world. They seem to have an odd, peculiar characteristic of eating spiders, and they drink snake's blood, and perhaps they eat tiger penises. And this is unacceptable behavior from China in the world, because the world is developing as an economy and as a democracy, and it's trying to accept and introduce and develop freedoms and liberties. But with China, we have some kind of authoritarian attitude, and we have some kind of a odd culture as well, where it's eating spiders. They have sharp hair as well, and they look very unusual compared to the dignity of man that is pictured in the world, and it's pictured in the art of the world. I think that animals and people have round eyes, and they should have round eyes, because they're beautiful round eyes. Animals and people have round eyes, but I think with Chinese, they don't have round eyes, and Japanese don't have round eyes, and it could be unusual, but it is a problem. I think that is important in the world, because when man walks, he walks upright, and he should walk upright with round eyes, not other eyes, with the round eyes, because he has to look at the world. He has a vision, and he has to look at the world so he can develop the world and use tools and eat food and plant trees and perhaps stroke animals and other things. So I think we as human beings, we have a posture and dignity with the way we walk as human people. So that's why these things are important. And I think China is a challenge in the world. That's what I think. I think China is a problem in the world. Thank you very much.